Hi, this is Trey Pass. I'm going to do my second night of Mr. Nightmare reactions. This one is called Three Creepy True Supermarket Horror Stories, Three Tales. So let's get right into it. I'll be right back with my reaction. Okay, I'm going to put my headphones on. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Right now, go. Supermarket Horror Stories. Story 1, G. Lombardo.
I'm a mother of three,
Okay.
and so our grocery bills are quite high. My husband works at a tech company, and I currently stay at home raising the kids, who are 10, 7, and 3.
Okay.
I go food shopping at least twice a week, and I usually go to the King Cullen near our house, though I sometimes go to the nearby Target as well. Those are two of a very small list of grocery stores in our quiet town.
Okay.
To give as much context as possible, we're an Italian family and I'm currently 40 years old. This happened not even a year ago when I was 39. I was running behind on shopping one day, so I went much later than usual. The King Cullen by us closes at 10,
Okay.
and it was definitely past 9 o'clock already,
Okay.
so I hurried over to the store with my flyers and coupons. The kids were complaining about a lack of food in the house, so I had to get a quick grocery run in. Most days I'd have to go shopping with my 3-year-old daughter Haley. Since it was late and my husband was home from work at this time, for once I was able to go shopping alone, which I consider a luxury. I got to the King Cullen, which was pretty void of people at this hour since it would soon be closing.
Okay.
I grabbed a cart and quickly started doing my laps down the aisles and grabbing whatever was on my list and whatever was on sale. I was in the cereal aisle when I got a tap on my shoulder, which startled me. I turned and saw a very tan man about my height with a baseball cap on, a black goatee, and a red zipper-up hoodie and jeans on.
Oh.
He laughed and apologized for startling me, and said that he'd been looking everywhere for a specific bag of chips that was in my cart, and he asked where I found them. I politely told him the aisle, and he said he checked but couldn't find it. So I actually led him exactly to where I found the chips. He thanked me with his awful breath, and I smiled and was about to walk back to my cart.
Yeah.
But then he started making pointless conversation with me about why he liked those chips so much.
Oh boy.
Something silly like the ingredients or a lack of a specific ingredient. I kept trying to make it obvious that I was inching my way back to my cart.
Yeah.
He wouldn't get the hint though. It was when he made a weird pause and then said, "Gosh, you're pretty," that I said thank you and that I had to get back to my shopping before they close. I went to my cart, but he followed me and kept talking to me.
Oh boy.
At this point, as politely as I could, I told him I really would just like to shop in peace.
Exactly.
He finally seemed to get the hint and walked away.
Okay.
But for the rest of my time in the store that night, I kept seeing that man circling the aisles. And each time he walked past the aisle I was in, he'd slow down or even stop and just look down at me. I was getting increasingly uncomfortable
Can imagine.
and hurried up my shopping. When I was finally done, I went to the checkout, and as I emptied my cart, here comes Red Hoodie Guy with a whole 2 or 3 items, and he waits on line right behind me. He doesn't say a word anymore, but I felt his gaze even through the back of my head.
Yeah.
When I was done checking out, I pushed my cart away, and the man called out, "Have a good night, ma'am," and I ignored it. As I was unloading my car, I noticed the Red Hoodie Guy in the parking lot looking at me as he walked to his car. He got into a junky-looking Honda that must have been like 30 years old. He didn't turn the car on though, he just sat in it. I finally finished loading my car, so I got inside, started it, and began driving out of the parking lot.
Oh boy.
I looked in my rearview mirror a few times, and I didn't see any headlights behind me, so I felt safe to drive home. It wasn't until I pulled into the driveway and looked to my left down the street that I realized there was a car with its headlights off driving slowly down the street approaching our house.
Call the cops.
It pulled to the curb a few houses down. It looked to be that Honda from the parking lot.
Call the cops.
I went inside the house and called my husband's name. He came downstairs looking concerned, and I told him I was followed home by a creep. He hurried outside to the stoop, but by this time the car was already gone. The following weekend, late at night when we were all in bed, we heard some shuffling around outside in the side yard. I shook my husband to go check what it was, and he went to slide the window open. He saw someone right below the window trying to open the side gate to the backyard, but after hearing the window slide open, the man looked up and started to run. My husband grabbed the baseball bat from under the bed and ran outside, and when he came back a minute later, he said he saw the car speeding down the street and he tried to chase after it. He perfectly described the shitty Honda that the Red Hoodie Guy was driving. It was undoubtedly him. We phoned the police, and given the late hour, a police officer arrived to our house in under 5 minutes. I described the man and his car the best I could, and that was that. He never returned to our house, not after seeing my angry husband chasing his car on foot with a bat. It still remains uncomfortable that a creep like that knows where I live, though.
Exactly. Should have called the cops when he started following you home. Story 2 by Alex.
When I was in college, I worked at Wallbaum's.
Okay.
The one I worked at was a 24-hour one, so a couple unfortunate people would always be stuck working that awful shift. I thought since I was 20 and in college that my boss would never put me on an overnight shift. But unfortunately, I guess when she asked my school schedule and I told her I was off Mondays and Wednesdays, she saw me as a perfect sucker to stick on the overnight shift occasionally moving forward. One day I saw that I was scheduled for a Tuesday night from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. I had to triple check the schedule to make sure that that was right. I felt sick seeing that, and when I asked my supervisor why I was put on the overnight shift, he told me if I'm over 18, I don't really have a choice.
What?
I considered quitting, but I needed the job and money.
Yeah.
So I just sucked it up and decided I'd do it this one time and then tell my boss I can't do it ever again because I have to study for school. So I arrived at the store at 12 o'clock and relieved my coworker Amanda. Half the lights in the store were out at this hour to save on electricity.
What?
There were a surprising amount of customers in the store when I got there. I guess more people than I expected would do quick midnight shopping runs.
Yeah.
Past 1 a.m. though, the place was completely dead.
Oh.
Maybe 3 customers in the entire hour. As it got later in the night, there were less and less customers. It was past 2 a.m. by this point.
Yeah.
I was as bored as humanly possible, and there hadn't been a customer in over an hour.
Okay.
I wondered if there were any other employees in the building. There had to be, I figured. They couldn't have a lone 20-year-old running the whole place by himself.
No.
There was some bald guy who looked like he could be a manager that kept passing by the front registers every few minutes. He had a key ring attached to his khakis with like 10 keys on it, and he was holding a small backpack type bag in his hand. So I said, "Excuse me, are you the manager?" And he came over and asked if it was my first day on the job,
Yeah.
to which I said it was my first night shift. He shook my hand without giving me his name, and asked me if I could go to the back warehouse of the store and organize the pallets. He said he'd watch the front. I didn't exactly know what that meant, but I'd figure it out. I walked towards the back of the store, and as I did, I saw him doing something to the entrance door of the store, like he was reaching for some switch on the side of it, as if he were locking it.
Uh-oh.
I made my way into the back warehouse, where I saw a tall man who looked like he were 30, wearing a manager's vest that said Wallbaum's.
Yeah.
He saw my apron and introduced himself as Rob, the night manager.
Okay.
I said, "Oh, I thought the guy in the front was the night manager." And he looked puzzled and said, "Who?"
What are you talking about?
When I described that man from before, he asked me to show him who I was talking about, because he was the only manager on duty.
Uh-oh.
We didn't even make it out of the warehouse before all the lights in the store turned off.
Oh.
Rob told me to wait in the warehouse while he checks out what's going on.
Oh.
I watched as he walked through the warehouse doors into the darkness of the store, with the only light out there being from the lights of the dairy coolers that were still
He's
on.
nuts.
I sat on a box on a pallet, and was on my phone trying to text any of my friends who could have been awake about what was happening, when I heard a door from inside the warehouse opening.
What about calling the cops?
It was on the other side of the warehouse, separated by the freezer and dairy fridge. There were 2 ways in and out of the warehouse back into the store.
Okay.
I still sat there, now with my ears perked up, listening for any sounds, when I heard quiet, slow footsteps getting closer, followed by a voice saying, "Hey kid, you in here?"
Uh-oh.
But it wasn't Rob's voice. It was that bald guy's voice.
Ah.
I hurried out the warehouse doors into the store, but quietly. I jogged to the front of the store looking for Rob, but I couldn't find him.
Uh-oh.
I called out his name, nothing. I grabbed my jacket and tried to open the exit door, but it wouldn't open automatically. So I tried to physically open it, but it was locked. I heard footsteps approaching from behind me, and I turned and almost screamed, but I realized it was Rob the manager. He flicked some lever or something on the top right of the door and unlocked it, and he said in a panicked whisper to hurry and get outside.
Yeah.
He followed behind me. We left the store and he got right on the phone with the police, and I heard his whole conversation. He said he believed an armed man locked himself into the Wallbaum's and was probably trying to rob the place.
Jesus.
I told him to tell the police that I think he was coming to harm me in the warehouse, which he relayed to the operator. He told me I should go wait in my car or leave. I'm sure because he didn't want the store to be held liable for anything if something were to happen.
Yeah.
I went and sat in my car and just watched for a little while, and within 10 minutes there were at least 4 police cars outside the store.
Okay.
They all went inside for a while, and I didn't see whatever was going on, so I left. I didn't quit after that, though. The next time I went into work, I was told all about what happened by my supervisor. The security footage showed that bald man circling the place, acting suspicious, checking if the coast were clear to do whatever he was planning to do after locking the doors.
Okay.
He cut the lights in the store. The cameras showed him going straight to the warehouse where he told me to go.
Uh-oh.
That's the scariest part to me, because if he were armed and robbing the place, he could have been on his way to put a gun to my head or something.
Exactly.
The camera showed him leaving through the emergency exit in the warehouse way before the police arrived.
Of course.
In the end, I never worked an overnight shift again after talking to my boss, and I stayed at that job for another few months. I'm not sure if that man was ever identified.
Okay. Story 3 by Melvin Gregg.
I used to work as a night restock worker at a supermarket in a somewhat rural town.
Okay.
The store was called Great American. It was the biggest and best supermarket in the area. My shift would be as soon as the store would close at 10.
Yeah.
I'd work from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. the latest, restocking the shelves and organizing everything before the next operating day.
Okay.
I, of course, had the keys to the store for the after hours.
Yeah.
It would be a team of 2, myself and one other, either Terry, Carter, or Alfonso. Tonight, I was supposed to be working with Terry.
Okay.
I arrived to the store and let myself into the back where all the inventory yet to be stocked was. I started my work using the pallet jack to bring a whole pallet of boxes out to the shopping floor. I started with the bread and nuts aisle, rotating the older loaves in the front and putting the newer loaves in the back.
Okay.
Halfway through, I realized I hadn't seen Terry yet. I walked to the back area of the store where the inventory was, where we'd leave our belongings. He wasn't back there yet. I left the back door cracked open with a door stopper for him when he would show up. So I went back to work for another half hour. And with still no sign of Terry, I once again went to the back of the store. He wasn't in there, but I noticed the back door was shut.
Oh.
I assumed that meant Terry was here somewhere. I went to open the back door and saw the door stopper was outside, which I thought was weird that he kicked it outside instead of bringing it in.
Exactly.
I called Terry's name and it echoed through the room. He didn't call back, so I decided to call him. He picked up, sounding like he was in bed, and I asked him if he was at work. He said he wasn't coming in tonight because he was sick. Suddenly, I got the chills. I told him someone kicked the door stopper off the door, and he said it could have just come undone itself. Nobody else was scheduled to work that night. I told him feel better, and we hung up. I wasn't sure if I was convinced that the door stopper came undone itself, because I kicked it under the door pretty tightly. I did a quick look around just to make sure no one was in the back of the store, and when I didn't see anyone, I went back to work, though I felt a slight sense of unease the whole time. I was stocking the remainder of the bread when I heard a loud sound echo from across the shopping floor. Okay, now someone had to be in here.
Of course.
I got off my knees and went to the middle aisle that intersected all the other aisles. I looked straight down the aisle and stood there for a hot second, and all the way on the opposite side of the store in the dairy aisle, a man dressed in black walked past the middle aisle, looking down in my direction. I felt my heart drop. It felt like that scene from the movie Signs where the alien walks past the birthday party.
Oh, man.
I had to think logically that maybe this was someone else filling in for Terry's shift that our boss didn't tell me about. I started to speed walk down the center aisle and yelled "excuse me" very loudly. I looked to the left down every aisle I passed since he went towards the front of the store. In one of those aisles, he was waiting at the end of it, standing there fully facing my direction. When he saw me, he walked out of sight in the direction I was just coming from. I yelled "excuse me" again and started to run down that aisle to catch up to him. I didn't get a good look at his face yet. When I got to the front of the aisle by the cash registers, I looked down the direction he went, and I saw him all the way at the end by the bread aisle. Half his body was hidden behind the shelf. His mouth was hanging open, and he started to wave me over, but he didn't say anything. His face was freaking me out.
Call the cops.
I attempted one more time to speak to him and said, "Who are you?" And he disappeared behind the shelf. I wasn't being paid enough for this.
Exactly.
I went outside to sit in my car and call my boss. He picked up and I told him there was some random freak roaming around the store. He told me to get him out of there if I can, or call the police to get him out. I was not going to attempt to physically remove a crazy person from the store, so I called 911. I waited in my car until a police car showed up. I greeted the officer and asked him to follow me inside. We walked around the place looking for the man. and we saw him at one of the aisles again, creepily standing there again as if playing a game. When the police officer commanded him to come here, he actually listened. He was put in handcuffs, and he was the strangest man I'd ever seen. He kept smiling and looking at me non-stop, licking his lips. He had huge bags under his eyes. The only words he spoke were when answering the police officer, saying he was looking for a snack. I didn't like the way he was looking at me as the police officer was walking him back outside to his car. It was this menacing, threatening smile that I haven't forgotten to this day. I continued my work after that. Needless to say, I never left any of the doors open again.
Exactly. Good point. That's how he probably got in. Exactly. That's crazy. That's nuts. Oof. Okay. Okay, those are 3 creepy stories. Okay, the first story with the woman. Yeah, you should have, when you saw that he was following you home, that's when you should have called the cops. I know you told your husband, but you should have called the cops, because the cops could have came and caught him there. And then, of course, he knew where you live, so of course he tried to come there again, but thankfully your husband was there to chase him off. But you could have had him caught the first time when you saw him follow you home, especially, after you tried to, ignore him and he kept following you behind you. That's when, as soon as you got home, you should have called the cops to tell your husband, listen, this creepy guy is following me. Let's call the cops. He's parked down the street. Call the cops. So let the cops deal with that. They're equipped to deal with it, not you or your husband. Because suppose your husband did go out there and catch up to the guy, and the guy pulled a gun and blew your husband's head off. Okay? You'd be feeling awful about this. I sent my husband out there. No, call the cops first. Let them investigate and disarm yourself and box yourself up somewhere where nobody can get in. I think that's the best sort of advice to do it. And then that second story with the guy, come on, man. You don't know who you work with? That's the part I can't believe. If you work in the night shift, wouldn't you know who the night manager is when you check in? Wouldn't you just automatically, when you punch in, let the night manager know that you're there? Because I assume the night manager is there before you. Wouldn't you just, when you come in, check in, say, listen, I'm here. Exactly, and know who you're working with. That's the part I find kind of strange. That if you're working a night shift, wouldn't your manager say, listen, you're going to be working with the night manager, Bob, and 2 other employees named Sue and Kim or whatever. They would tell you that, right? Not you just randomly show up. I mean, you just show up and then punch in and then start working and not introduce yourself. That'd be crazy. Wouldn't the manager say, who the hell is you? Especially if that's the first time you're working a night shift. He don't know who you are. So I think that would be, that would be extra weird that he would say, who the hell are you? Exactly. Just, that you would, naturally introduce yourself, I would think, to the manager and stuff, and so that he knows who you are. And exactly, instead of having just random people walk in and he don't know who you are. Okay. And you think that, again, especially if you work at a night shift, you should have security there. And that's another thing I can't, these supermarkets, if you're working a night shift, you should automatically have a security guard there working alongside you, just in case you need that person. I know probably some stores probably don't do that or can't afford it, whatever, but I think that would make the most sense, because why are you going to have some people working by themselves and without any protection, except you should have a security guard working at night. They have security guards working in the daytime. I think at night would be even more prudent to do that. And this third story, again, exactly, he should, don't prop open the door expecting somebody to be there and they're not there. And then you got some crazy dude, rummaging through the store and stuff that you don't even know about. He's playing peekaboo with you and you don't know who he is. You don't know if he's crazy or whatever, or he's stalking you or something. That's why don't prop open the door for nobody else. Let them come in the regular way. Okay, he did that as a favor. But you don't know who random person could be walking by and say, oh man, the door's open there. Let me sneak in there and grab some food or something. Yeah, that's just insanity doing that. And then, of course, but luckily for you, you managed to call the cops and stuff and get him arrested, because you're insane. Okay, and that other manager in the second story, come on, man, you gonna go investigate? No, don't go investigate. No. I'd have told him, don't go investigate into a darkened store and you don't know where the psycho is. No, call the cops and tell them, listen, somebody broke into the store and they cut off the lights in the front of the store. Me and my employer in the back, okay, or we're in the car, my car, and that we locked the door and he's stuck in there. As I said, don't do the cops. Why people feel the need to go investigate? Okay, with just like let me go investigate. I'm getting paid minimum wage, so let me go risk my life for this stuff in this store. No, don't do that. Do not do that at all, okay? No, let the cops call the cops and let the cops do what they do, okay? That's what they get paid for, okay? Do not do that. They get paid to risk their lives, not you, okay? So don't even try. And like I said, the woman in the first story, definitely she should have, no way in the world. I said when that guy followed her home, should have called the cops. I know she told her husband no, but call the cops. The cops could have caught him because he actually waited at the end of the, down the block from you. So obviously he was still there, and the cops could have pulled up and nabbed him. But you waited, which was, I think, it's insanity. Wait, and then luckily, like I said, then your husband saw him that second time when he would come, because he obviously knew where you lived and decided to come back. But thankfully, like I say, your husband was there. But then again, you sending your husband out there, he could get killed. What's to prevent him to follow, taking the guy chasing him down the block? Your husband chasing him down the block, and he pulls a gun and blows your husband's head off. Okay, when you could have, if you'd have called the cop the first time when the guy followed you home, that would have been better, and it could have got caught and locked up. But now it is scary that the guy knows where you live. This psycho knows where you live, because suppose he stalks your house and stakes out your house and waits for your husband, like to go to work or something. And you're a stay-at-home mom. Okay. That's scary. That's really scary. Okay. But again, working at night with those places, I still think if you're working at night in these places, you should definitely know who you're working with. Okay. There's no way, even if it's your first night, you think when you show up, the manager of the store would say, listen, you'll be working with Bob, Sue, and Kim. Okay. So when you check in, introduce yourself to them so they know who you are. Okay. And so that way, if some random stranger just walks into the store and pretends like he's the manager, you wouldn't, because you've never met the manager before. Okay, that just makes better sense. But those are some pretty creepy stories. Again, like I said, you don't know what random person is gonna walk into a supermarket in the middle of the night. Exactly, any random person. But again, I also think they should have security in there, because I think that's nuts to have people working at night with no security. It's insanity. Okay, I think that's like the people that work in these 7-Elevens at night or convenience stores at night. No, you should have a security guard in there automatically. I know maybe most places can't afford to have 2 people working. No, but you should definitely have security if you can afford it, because I think that's just dangerous, having one person working at night by themselves without a weapon or anything. You're asking for any random nut job or group of nut jobs to walk in and potentially kill you, okay, and try to rob you. Okay, so I think that's why I always think it's best to have a security guard, an armed security guard, working at night with you, working in the store overnight. I think that would be a lot better. Okay, and stores should do that. But anyway, let me know what you think of these 3 stories. Mr. Nightmare, again, another 3 good stories. I'll leave a link to Mr. Nightmare's channel in the description box so you can check it out for yourself. Also have links to my social media in the description box, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also have a link to my other channel called Views and Opinions. If you check that out as well. Also have a link down below to my patron. I want to say a special thank you to my patron. His name will appear in this video somewhere. I want to say thank you to him for supporting me. Always have my back. And again, my patron is only $5 a month. I have tons of content on there, tons of unedited content on there. I have Marvel shows, DC TV shows, the Star Wars TV shows on there as well as movies. Tons of content. Follow the link down below to the patron and check it out. And only $5 a month if you want to join and support me. I truly appreciate it. Also, give this video a thumbs up. It helps the channel, and I truly appreciate it. Also, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, so you know when I upload new content to this channel. And this is Trey Pastor saying so long, and take care.